Israel was the strongest lobby I've ever seen. They had total control over the Congress, and now they don't. October 7th was a false flag, either allowed to happen or it was designed and coordinated by we know who.
I just don't understand this alliance that's alienating us from every other country and making us a global pariah.
News, current affairs, facts and opinion. Their future in our hands. Markets, globalist technocrats versus the people. A line in the sand. The McIntyre Report.
And welcome, folks. Jamie McIntyre reporting live for Australian National Review. McIntyre Report, ANR.news. Follow 24-hour news headlines. Of course, there's lots always happening in the world, and fake news media will only tell you a fraction of it. All tell you a complete false narrative. But let's share what's really happening. I'm joined today by our American correspondent, Lilly Gaddis. Lilly, welcome back to the McIntyre Report. You've been on a bit of a break, bit of a holiday. It's probably been good for you. Let's talk about, I want to share this with you because your beloved president come out and said this. President Trump says Israel is losing influence over the US Congress. I will tell you, Israel had the strongest lobby in Congress of anything or body or of any company or corporation or state that I've ever seen. Israel was the strongest. Today, it doesn't have that strong lobby. It's amazing, Trump told the Daily Caller. Israel was the strongest lobby I've ever seen. They had total control over the Congress, and now they don't. Very interesting words by Trump. You know, we could look at this, I guess, a couple of ways. What's your take on it?
Well, I think the way it is in 24 and 25, there seemed to be a mass awakening. It helped with Elon Musk buying X. Censorship kind of was temporarily lifted. It was really bad, so people didn't have access to the information. Now that people do, now that the censorship kind of lifted a little bit, I have a feeling that's going to come to an end shortly. But people were able to learn about things themselves instead of being like basic bitch conservatives and just thinking it's right and left. They kind of started realizing who is actually behind most of these problems, and they started realizing the influence that actually Israel does have over our government. That's all information that's been suppressed for years. So with this great awakening, you know, you have to do damage control. People who were, you know, they were able to run being Israel first and pro-Israel, that doesn't cut it anymore. So I think everybody has to kind of adjust their messaging. The PR people are in full swing. They're trying to fix this because now people are demanding, okay, what are you going to do about this Israel issue? Why do they control our government? And they feel like Trump is now sold out as well because everything he's done has been to benefit Israel and is not America first. So I think you're starting to see a lot of big voices who, by the way, have been with Fox News and other establishment media and these conservative pundits who would never touch this issue before. Now they're kind of grazing over the topic. But I think I see it as more like they're trying to sway this train away from what the actual problem is and trying to make it out like something that it isn't. So I think this is him just addressing a PR crisis. He's losing a lot of his base because of his support for Israel. Most people are not supporting Israel anymore because of the genocide going on in Gaza. And it's a really bad look for Trump to be supporting them. So I think he's trying to quell some of the fears that Israel does own our government, which they do, by acting like, oh, we're winning, actually. You know, they don't have any control. They have no control over Congress. Every congressman pretty much is owned by AIPAC. Every congressman pretty much has an AIPAC handler, and they do exactly, you know, as the Israel lobby says. If you don't believe me, go on Twitter and Google in basically any congressman and type in Israel, and they will have posted multiple pro-Israel posts. So if that does not scream that Congress is still owned, I don't know what does. So this just seems like a PR strategy to me to help, you know, calm people down, stop worrying about the Epstein thing. That's not real. Stop worrying about Israel and our government. We've taken care of that. That's just, I mean, him saying they don't have control of Congress, that's just a complete joke.
Yeah, I kind of look at your take as well, because I mean, the QAnons out there will take it, say, here's evidence that he's clearly doing something about Israel. And we all wish he would, or at least attempt to. But it's true that Israel certainly had a strongest lobby. It possibly is true that they are losing their influence, but as you said there, they still clearly have immense influence. They probably have to accept they have to change their messaging, and you've got to give it to them, whether we love or hate, the fake state of Israel. They are the PR spin masters. So they would be back to the drawing board going, we've got away with this for so long. Our PR was working so well because no one knew what we're up to. But now everyone's finding out that we're the problem, we're the enemy of humanity, and we own America. So now we have to try and change our strategy. And of course, as you would expect, Trump's advisors would have to go, look, you need to address this issue.
Yeah,
I see that his two biggest weaknesses is, one, pro-Israel. Any politician in the West now that runs on pro-Israel is political suicide, I see. I said this like a year ago. I think, we're quite good here at Australian National predicting trends, that if any politician in the West has had the balls to run on, tell Israel to go F itself, they would be elected, other than being cheated out of it. And now you can do that because the pylon is happening. Enough people are speaking out that everyone else has got confidence. You see with Tucker, you see with Candace Owens, you see Ian Carroll, many people, Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, these influencers or commentators speaking out. So now people are like, well, I can speak out and probably not get assassinated. So Israel has a massive problem. But of course, then you've got the Jewish speaking out and protesting against Netanyahu as well. And even in Australia, there's two major Jewish lobbies. One is so pro-Israel, pro-dropping bombs on children. It's atrocious, but the other one is very anti that. So there is division there. The other weakness, though, Lily, let's talk about, is that he posted a few days ago here about the Pfizer. So Pfizer's just been withdrawn in India. They have all sorts of problems there, and it's being withdrawn in other parts of the world. And Robert Kennedy Jr., obviously, they're doing a lot of independent studies, which the data is to be released. Effectively, to paraphrase Trump, this was his other weakness, was Operation Warp Speed, when he pushed the vaccines. But he said in his tweet effectively, why doesn't Pfizer just release the amazing results and data they showed to me to show how many lives it saved in COVID and how successful Operation Warp Speed was? Why don't they just release that? I want them to release that. However, if their data is not correct and this new independent data suggests otherwise, then it needs to be investigated thoroughly. That's effectively to paraphrase him. So what is your take on that? Do you think this is another, his PR people are going, look, this is your other weakness other than Israel, is Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, I would say this is another PR stunt. I mean, this just seems like backpedaling and playing dumb. This is classic, like, you're the president of the United States. You're telling me you didn't have some advisors telling you, hey, maybe don't encourage people to take an experimental drug. Hey, maybe don't mandate them to take an experimental vaccine that we know nothing about, just because they're rolling it out and trying to make a buck of it. So he's just backpedaling on this, and he's trying to pretend like, oh, I didn't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. When you're the president of the United States and you have the CIA in your ear and you have advisors and a whole team around you, I'm not really buying this idea that he just didn't know any better. Like, if you're that dumb, then how did you ever become president?
That's a valid question. And that's, I think, is a problem with Trump. Even people that like Trump, I think in some parts has good intentions. I mean, the challenge is he hasn't told Israel to go shove it. Some might say, well, it's very difficult to do that without being assassinated. But I think at the end of the day, you just got to go, this is what my life is about, and I'll take a stand regardless of the consequences. But, or he's playing 5D chess. But you and I and others probably no longer think that's happening, because I'm not sure Trump is a good chess player or even plays chess. But the problem is he's not well read. And anyone that's not well read is much easier to be manipulated, because he has to take the advice of what his advisors around him are telling him. So they all they have to do is push. They go, okay, how do we get Trump to support this or whatever policy they want? They just got to feed him information, like in the early days about Ukraine. He was fed, and he admits it, wrong information. It was made out that Russia was losing, weakening. Russia was being weakened, their military, and they're losing more men than Ukraine, when it was complete opposite. Ukraine has lost about 1.3 million soldiers and increasing to the best numbers, where we're looking at 10-15% of that for Russia. So Russian military hasn't weakened, it's become stronger. So That's an example of being misled. So my concern is with Trump. I wouldn't say he's stupid, because in some ways he's quite smart or effective, but he's not well read, which is always a concern, especially in a position that he's in. Let's look at some of these other things. This is probably his bigger concern. Let's take a look at this video, what's going on with China right now.
America is no longer the center of the world, and China just proved it. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, more than 20 heads of state, including China, India, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, came together, representing nearly 40% of humanity and 30% of the global economy. This isn't just another summit, it's a power shift. India's Prime Minister Modi met Xi Jinping in China for the first time in 7 years, resetting ties after border tensions. China responded by easing trade restrictions, while Russia pushed energy deals like the massive Siberia 2 pipeline. For the first time, Iran participated as a full SCO member, using the platform to resist U.S. sanctions. Meanwhile, Trump's 50% tariffs on Indian exports and pressure over Russian oil purchases have only driven India further into the arms of BRICS and SCO allies. The message is clear. Asia is building a multipolar future, and Washington isn't invited. What do you think? Can the U.S. still stop this shift?
So this is becoming a big issue for now Trump with his tariffs. I think there's some merit in some of the tariffs needed to change, and America needed to get a fair deal. But I think if they think they're going to plug their deficit and their money printing problems by, a sugar hit of tariffs, yes, it's bringing in extra income up front, but at what long-term costs? And I think if we look at the long-term costs already, the one against India, threatening 50% tariffs against India by Trump recently, has just pushed India and China together. It just, Israel's trying to divide the BRICS by creating a war with Pakistan, India. But now we have the BRICS nations, which is now actually over 40% of GDP, over 50% of the world's population. So if the world had voted, which they have, the people want a multipolar world. They don't want an Israel-led one world government, which controls America, Australia, and the fading British Empire. So just on tariffs and just on, I guess, Trump's positioning, if America doesn't dump Israel, does it even have a future?
Well, no, because I think it was in 2002, Netanyahu had said in a speech, he was like, we'll use America up for everything it can give until it dries up and blows away. If we continue with this alliance with Israel, when it's a one-way alliance, they're supposedly our ally, but we get nothing from them. They say they give us intelligence. All they do is spy on us. All they do is steal our intelligence. We get nothing from this relationship. They don't help us. They're ruining our credibility around the world. The rest of the world is rallying against Netanyahu. The International Criminal Court or whatever, he's a war criminal. He could be arrested in many countries he goes to. So it's hurting the Americans in many different ways. It's ruining our credibility. It's ruining our ability to trade with other countries. And they're just going to use this again, like he said, trust from the horse's mouth. They're going to use this up until there's nothing else. And I think you mentioned we were going to play a Nick clip, like he was talking. If Iran falls, then they're the power in the region, and they don't need us anymore. Right now, at least we're in a position where we kind of do have the leverage because they need us to fight their wars. If they don't need us to fight our wars anymore, then they can attack us as they have in the past. So this relationship has to end. It's destroying America. It's destroying the people's faith in our government, because it's good to have faith in your government as long as your government is actually working for you. But it's completely destroying the America as well as other Western countries around the world because of this toxic, relationship, and it's causing us to jump into other wars and lose friends. Like right now, we are attacking France. Why are we attacking France? France is actually a better ally of ours. They helped us in the Revolutionary War. They helped us in the Civil War. Why are we not aligning with them? Why are we going against them? Why are we going against our neighbors like Russia? I just don't understand this alliance that's alienating us from every other country and making us a global pariah.
Yeah, it's concerning because, America, meant to be under Trump, MAGA, become more isolated, like serve its national interest, which is perfect to join the BRICS then, because the BRICS is about national sovereignty, trade, not war, and a multipolar world. Now, if we asked and had a vote around the world, I don't know anyone that go, yeah, I want a one world government, dystopian track and surveillance state run by Israel. I don't think anyone would vote for that. And they say Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East, but look at the arrogance of Netanyahu. He's not listening to his own people, let alone anyone. They are bombing and slaughtering children and innocent civilians because they know no one has the ability right now to step in and stop them. So they're just pure arrogance. So what sort of democracy would that be if they were to take over the whole world and run the world? They wouldn't care what any of us said. They would just basically drop bombs on us or eliminate us. And people have to start to understand this. So let's listen to what Nick had to say about this.
If the Israelis prevail and Iran falls, we are talking about an era in history where Israel dominates the entire Middle East. They're unchained from the United States. But what happens on the other side of the fall of Iran and the total conquest and domination of the Middle East by Israel is that they become the world power. All the Jews and all of the world capitals that are working for Israel, suddenly they become our suzerain. Suddenly they become our true master. They become viceroys of an Israeli empire. This is what we're talking about. The days when the U.S. president has the ability to threaten to withhold foreign aid to Israel and make demands of that country, and for people like myself to go on Twitter and complain about these things, is going to come to an end. This is biblical.
Yeah, well, Nick obviously is on point there, I think, and it is. I've been saying as well, Lily, that people need to. They're still dumbed down Westerners, I say, even in Australia, supporting Israel. If Israel were to defeat Iran, what does that mean for the world? And massive protest rallies last weekend in Australia, some of the biggest we've ever seen, against mass immigration. But even then, Israel's hijacking that and making out, anyone supports Palestine is a domestic terrorist. We should, stand against immigration. But most of them are fooled and confused. They don't even know that Israel is behind the mass immigration. But what Nick had to say there, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he's absolutely on point. I mean, and that's why they've been pushing for this war for so long. I mean, you can go back in congressional hearings, and Israel's been pushing for a war with Iran forever. This has always been their end goal because they are the last power in the region holding them back. So if they do fall, I mean, they do have the domination. They don't need us anymore. They'll own the entire region, and that's a superpower right there. So that is really dangerous. And like he was saying, this is the point that most people don't want to touch on, is the international Jewry throughout the world. There are Jewish people throughout the world in every country. France has the largest population of Jews in Europe. All those people are loyal to Israel. All those people will be undermining the countries that they live in for the benefit of Israel, knowing that they can always flee back to Israel. Like the pedophile that was caught in the FBI sting in Las Vegas, he conveniently escaped to Israel, where he will not be extradited back to the United States because they protect pedophiles over there, as well as war criminals, apparently. So, I mean, this is not a country that you want ruling over us. These are people who look at us in their own scripts, in the Talmud, in their own Bible version of their Bible. They look at us as cattle and as slaves. So do you want that sort of people to be ruling over you? And if you don't, then we better be supporting Iran and hoping that they don't fall, because then they won't need the United States anymore.
Yeah, if you can understand, for the average person that's just becoming aware of what's really going on, they're like, my God, are you saying we should be on the side of Iran and Russia and China? Aren't they all communist nations? And Israel is a democracy. And I was highlighting to some people on Twitter recently, like, well, when's the last time Russia was communistic? Well, that was when the Rothschilds, the founders of Israel, took it over and killed the Russian Tsars and genocided 30 to 60 million Christians. And do you think they won't do that again? And when we say China and attack China as being communistic, China is nothing really like what we'd see as communism. It's largely a free market. Mm-hmm. And I think the RT, Rick Sanchez, the American that works for RT News, he was just there, and I've only seen the clip. I don't know if it is show, but he's walking through the streets of China and highlighting that how safe it is and how nice it is in Beijing. He said, I feel completely safe here. If I was walking through American cities, it wouldn't be the case. So we can criticize China all we like, but once again, they have a nationalist leader that cares for their people, and they're not trying to fight wars around the world. They're just trying to do the best for China and work on trade deals around the world that ideally, I would say, that are win-win, because that's how you do take over the world, by trade. That's the way we want people to have their influence, not take over the world by, as you say, circumnavigating their way up through the inside of a country and creating debauchery and destroying the nuclear family and traditional values, and being a cancer or parasite within the nation and taking over political power. Even in Australia, the Jewish lobby has outsized influence, and people's becoming apparent on that. But they create this confusion. And I think also, if you look at America with the mass illegal immigration problem, you can see there's multiple reasons why Israel does this, because if they can upset enough Americans to then support, say, Trump and being hardlined against immigration, really that's their perfect Trojan horse to come in and then use that to lock down anyone or deport anyone or overly censor anyone. So you can see how they drive up the left. And many people don't realize Antifa is funded by Israel, the George Soros and co, because they need to continue to divide left and right. And I'm trying to highlight to people, we must stop this support of left or right. We must support a multipolar world, which is BRICS, which means we have to support a true nationalist leader. What's your take on this?
Right. Well, until people can, because that's really, what's been holding people back is thinking that, oh, we just wait till, the next election cycle comes around. Well, left or right, you're getting the same thing. Both left and right, they will support Israel. They will never cut ties with Israel. They'll both give foreign aid to other countries. They will both allow immigrants to come in. You're just getting a different form of it, a different packaging. Right. And to your point, how you had mentioned, it's kind of the Trojan horse to crack down on people. What is Trump doing now? He's totally cracking down on crime in the big cities. So now I'm going to station troops in Alabama and Arizona to be able to be deployed to any cities if there is unrest. What do you think that unrest is going to be? It's going to be protest against the war with Iran because they're back at it. Don't think that this limited strike was just going to be a one-time deal. No, they want a full-on war with Iran, and they want the United States to be waging that war. So when that war happens with this great awakening going on at the same time, they know that there is going to be protests. They know there's going to be protests out against immigration, out against this tie with Israel, and they want to crack down on that. And that's what you're going to start seeing more of in the future, because since they've lost the propaganda war, now they don't have to fight with words. Now they're going to actually fight by sending the military in and shutting it down. It's going to be January 6th all over again, but multiple times a year.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You see now, when you understand what's going on, the game plan and how they're moving towards that, and of course how they manipulate, why they need left and right, opposing each other and hating each other. One, it keeps us divided. But I just see in Australia with the big protest rally, the poor Australians, at least they're trying to make an effort to stand up, but they're just confused.
Right.
They don't know who's behind the mass immigration. They're tricked into supporting Israel.
Right.
And then Israel has all these influences and attacking. Oh, how dare you? If you oppose Israel, you're obviously a Hamas supporter. So they're just playing both sides. And until we can get that messaging across, and I guess if you look at the media, you got the left-wing media and you got the Murdoch right-wing Zionist media. But until we support independent media, and independent media really has to, which I believe it does in most cases, we do here at Australian National Review, support a multipolar world. The left and right is both a one world government, as you said, run by Israel, and no one should support that. The only way they'll support that is by deception and trickery, of course, by the PR spin masters from that fake state created in 1948. Let's go to a quick ad break and come back. Let's talk about October 7th, because I think this is the one thing that can really wake people up if they realize Israel was behind that.
The McIntyre Report.
Welcome back, folks. McIntyre Report, follow our 24-hour news headlines. ANR.news, so much always happening. Independent media, we can talk about the topics, obviously fake news media don't want you to know about or trying to deceive you. Let's look at this interesting thing, Lily. October 7th, what really did happen? Now, of course, at independent media, we called it out early and said this is most likely a false flag. You can ask any number of questions. Why were the weapons removed off border guards weeks before October 7th in some cases? Why were the sensors and cameras which can detect, a mosquito or a mouse coming at that fence not working? Why was the IDF ignoring the SMS messages of a breakthrough? Why was the IDF beforehand sent, a long way away towards the West Bank? Why was the rave party moved 48 hours before to the border area? How did so many of those cars at the rave party get absolutely fried, incinerated to death, considering last time I checked, Hamas has no Apache helicopters or tanks? How did some of the Israeli homes get bombed by Israeli tanks and kill the only children or babies that were killed on October 7th if they have no tanks? How come we were told instantly that Hamas was baking babies in ovens and beheading babies, and raping girls? And why did we find out? Who comes up with this sick stuff to say that? Talk about smearing. You have to be sick to even come up with that. The list could go on. How come the mainstream media was embedded with Hamas before they come across the borders to capture all the footage? Strange coincidence that they were just there. We could go on, but anyone with a 5-year-old brain or greater would see that October 7th was a false flag, either allowed to happen or, as we would find out in the future, if not already, it was designed and coordinated by we know who. Let's take a quick look at this video and then let's discuss
October
it.
7th, which, by the way, the IDF mysteriously elected to pull their troops away from the border on that day. October 7th, when mysteriously also the IDF chose mysteriously to ignore 2 warnings which came from Egypt that Hamas was planning an attack. They just said, you know what, we're going to ignore that. This is all facts, by the way. The also mysterious decision by the government to ignore a plan which they had intercepted, a plan from Hamas to take 200 hostages. They had nothing about that. All of this leading up to that moment in October 7th, when for some inexplicable reason, the IDF was just not able to get any one of their very many soldiers to intervene on that attack for 2 entire hours. Utterly implausible. Don't believe me? Just ask Charlie Kirk.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still have the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate non-conspiracy question.
Questions that Bibi Netanyahu doesn't want to answer.
Wow. So Lily, your take on October 7th?
Well, it was absolutely a false flag. I mean, that's just obvious. They've been pushing for the war forever. It wasn't really working. The presidents were kind of putting them off. We don't really want to do that. Afghanistan 2.0. I don't think people would be cool with that. So what do these people do best? Well, they specialize in assassinations, false flags, and atrocity propaganda. So they had to perform a false flag and then immediately pump out the atrocity propaganda. If your troops were in such shambles, if there was such disarray and such chaos in Israel because nobody knew what happened and there was all these hacks and we don't know what happened, how did you manage to start pumping out the atrocity propaganda so fast? How'd you manage to tell us and know exactly what Hamas was doing when you couldn't even figure out where your own troops were? So the atrocity propaganda, this is what these people do. This is how they got us to go to war against Germany. They started pumping out atrocity propaganda against Germany before they had even started a war. They waged war on Germany before there was even a war going on. This is what these people do. It's so obvious that this was a false flag. This was their last ditch attempt to justify the genocide going on in Gaza. They were going to do it whether we liked it or not. But they felt like if they had enough of this horror welled up within the American people, which has already been primed because of this terrorist, propaganda they've been sowing. Not that I'm a fan of Muslims taking over our country, and there is a lot of problems over there, but it's them behind the problems. It's not the Muslims that are necessarily the problem. So, I mean, it's just obviously, there's no questions in my mind that this was set up, and it's their way of justifying going into Gaza and ultimately overthrowing Iran.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think also if we put some background behind this too, nearly all wars are won banker wars, and Israel is a banker state, banking cartel state created by the Rothschilds, dear Lord Rothschilds, part of the Balfour Declaration. So people have to have that understanding too. And it's a nation that claims they have the right to self-defense, but as you highlighted there, where was their self-defense on October 7th? So big on self-defense, but they couldn't defend against a battalion of dirt bikes and an air force of paragliders. The other question they try and put up or argument, well, it's a war, there's just collateral damage, we're not really killing children and civilians in Gaza. But I say to people, well, if it's a war, wouldn't a war mean needs an opposing army? And the Palestinians don't have an army. But you go, oh, what about Hamas? Well, as I said, Hamas, how many army tanks they have? 0. Missiles, US precision weapons, 0. Aircraft carrier on loan to them like Israel has, 0. Army tanks, 0. Fighter jets, 0. So where's the war? Right. And 33 of the 36 medical centers in Gaza have been bombed to oblivion. So are we saying Hamas was under 33, the 36 hospitals? Or what about the schools and universities and 90% of residential buildings? Surely, if they're all being bombed now, they would have killed a lot of Hamas. But other people need to also have the frame of reference and know, well, who created Hamas? If Hamas is so evil and they killed only a fraction of the 1,100 Israelis on October 7th, because the large majority have now been independently proved to have been killed by Israel, that means Israel is like 10 times more evil. Right. But they also don't know that Israel started Hamas and up until 2012 funded Hamas, begged Qatar to fund it ever since. They actually shuffled $1.4 billion in US dollars to Hamas since then. They funded the head office for Hamas in Qatar to be opened. And we can't deny that there's not Mossad operatives dressed up as Hamas and doing a lot of this killing. So people need to understand all that to go, was I lied to? Now, also, they need to also understand is that Israel focus tested beforehand baby beheadings, baking babies in ovens, and raping girls. And that's why those words were used, because they're already tested on how emotionally it evokes Westerners. So I guess the question is, Lily, all wars, as we know, the Iraq War, Vietnam War, World War I, World War II, all based on lies, and they're all banker wars. So people need to understand this. Does it frustrate you, or what can we do to stop dumbed down Westerners falling for this atrocious PR spin and propaganda by Israel?
I think as soon as people wake up and realize who their enemy are, that's all that needs to be done. Once you wake up and realize this is who these people are, this is how they think of non-Jews, this is how they think of people who are not born in Israel and are not Jewish, that kind of answers every question you have. And another point to what you were talking about with, oh, this is totally a war and it's totally justified. If it's such a war going on, if it's so justified, why do they keep on killing journalists? Why did they kill those 3 or 4 journalists that they did when they specifically targeted I think it was a hospital like a week ago, and purposely targeted 3 or 4 journalists and they killed them? And then they went back and struck the thing as soon as medical support arrived. So why are you killing journalists? If it's totally a war going on, if you're completely being honest and you're not hiding anything, why are the only journalists allowed in Israel the ones that are controlled by the Israeli government? Why is it just propagandists that's allowed there, and you murder any Western journalists who go over there and try to get the actual news? So it's obviously lies. And once people realize who's behind the lies, once you realize somebody's lying to you, you don't believe them anymore. So I think if people just wake up to who these people actually are, what this government actually is, and how they view you and every person who is not Jewish, that's the missing piece to the puzzle. And then people won't fall for these wars against, because once you understand that, you can see through all of the propaganda and you know it for what it is.
Yeah, it's so true. And what frustrates me, Lily, is you hear online people go, well, why don't they just release the hostages and the war would end? I mean, some dumbed down Westerners actually believe that and realize that, does Israel care about the hostages? They slaughtered most 1,100 people on October 7th to stop them becoming hostages, and they haven't stopped bombing the hostages in Gaza ever since. And then they claim that one of them was starved by Hamas. And it's like, well, hello, you didn't think that through too well, because it's Israel starving all of Gaza. So how would the few hostages that aren't bombed by Israel yet not be starving? I mean, they don't even think about how much they spin their PR. But people have this false belief that, oh, it's all about hostages, or if they get rid of Hamas. Well, that's interesting, because there's no Hamas in the West Bank. And guess what? They're bombing the West Bank. They're stealing the West Bank land and putting illegal settlements there. They're sniping people there. So I think there is not a single thing, and we offered this about Israel, anyone that can provide, and Avi Yemeni's been invited to come on the McIntyre Report. He's got a big mouth in Australia and very used to be part of the IDF, but pro-Israel shield. And there's many of them, but it's like, we'll offer $6 million to anyone that one can prove that Hitler killed 6 million Jews, but we'll offer $1 million for anyone that can provide a logical argument of why you, anyone on the planet, any nation should stand with Israel. That's not easily debunked as simple propaganda. And no one can do it. So the interesting thing there, Lily, was Charlie Kirk on that interview. Now, Charlie is generally very pro-Israel. And obviously he's a good Christian boy. He's obviously misled a little bit about thinking the fake state of Israel 77 years ago, created in 1948, is somehow biblical when it's not. And that somehow God chose these people, which clearly is the biggest, BS I've ever heard, as if God would choose the Rothschilds. And how come no one bothered to fact check that? But do you think people like Charlie Kirk are maybe slowly waking up, or what's going on there?
Absolutely not. They want you to think that they're waking up. They want people to think that they're so stupid as to think that they are a normie person. That argument that, oh, I just found out, only works for somebody who is not in politics. If you've been in politics your entire life, that's your career, you've been on all these websites, you've seen 4chan, you've seen all of this stuff, you know what's going on. You know what's going on. You know how it actually works over there. You've met these people. You see it firsthand. You see that these Jewish people control your government because you've met those Jewish people that control your politicians. So that's complete bullshit. Any of these people, anyone who is not speaking out about Israel, who has been in politics and are just now coming around, it's because they're trying to subvert the message, because they are paid shills. Charlie Kirk is a paid shill for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been the ultimate Trojan horse for all of this. The only reason people buy the propaganda coming out of Israel is because they're diehard Trump fans, and they'll believe whatever Trump says. That's why Trump's very dangerous, even if he doesn't inadvertently mean it. People will believe exactly what Donald Trump says. And the Charlie Kirks and the Tucker Carlsons and even Candace Owens, They are simply mouthpieces of that. These people are establishment creatures. They've been in politics their whole life, and they're just now waking up. Again, that only works for a person who is not in politics, who doesn't know any better, and got their news from TikTok and Instagram. That makes sense for those kind of people, but not for some. I'm not buying this. I was just dumb and I was just played. I was on the scene. I was thrown into the scene for 3 months, and I learned about the Jewish question. As soon as I learned about the Israeli issue, I started speaking out about it. So I'm not buying this bullshit. If I'm in it for 3 months and I'm not even in politics as an elected politician or a mouthpiece for Trump who meets with Trump regularly, I'm not buying this excuse that they're just now waking up. They just have to address it because everybody's clamoring for them to address it. And so now they're being used to subvert the message and divert people away from what the actual truth is. So these people, in my opinion, are more dangerous than Benjamin Netanyahu, because people trust these people. Normal American people, normal Westerners listen to these people and they think they are telling the truth. Well, if they were telling the truth, if they were not creatures of the swamp, they would have been talking about this a long time ago, because they've been in this scene for a long time. So I'm not buying the playing dumb. It's just as unbelievable as Trump pretending like, oh, sorry, man, I was just fooled. I'm the president. I have everybody in my ear. I talk to everybody. I have access to information no one else does. I'm not buying it. These are just mouthpieces. These are just shills.
Yeah, it's interesting you highlight that, because, of course, we know Israel PR spin is very good at creating the opposing. They know we need the opposing. If it's all just one-sided, it doesn't work. We need to, because everyone would unite then on one side.
Right.
So we need to have these opposing figureheads even come out and be attacking Israel. But that's great, because it still creates division. And who wants anti-Semitism the most is Israel. Who's responsible for anti-Semitism the most is Israel. I mean, it's not hard to stop anti-Semitism. It's stop dropping bombs on children, perhaps might go a long way towards it, and stop, doing fake terror plots in Australia, as well as that they've been caught out doing it in other places. The biggest weakness against Trump, I guess, and people that still support him, is that Trump has the ability to simply turn off the weapons supply to Israel and end the war in Gaza, and he's meant to be a peacetime president. But he has failed to do that. And I think that's the biggest criticism anyone could label at him is, come on, Trump, you are responsible. You're supplying the murderer with weapons continually, and he's murdering. You can't just turn a blind eye and go, oh, no, we just got to get rid of Hamas.
Right.
I mean, it's just nonsense.
He just needs to just be honest about it. I mean, I get it. He doesn't want to wind up like JFK. Nobody wants to wind up with a bullet in the back of their head. And that's exactly what would happen if any president went against the Israeli lobby. That's why they only give you two candidates to choose from. 2 candidates have been chosen who've been groomed or have blackmail material on them or already support Israel. So I understand why Trump would not want to turn into the next JFK, because that's exactly what would happen if he did cut off Israel completely. But he just needs to be honest about it and stop pretending that he's America first. Because if you're too cowardly to go against these people, which, again, I get it. You got a family. You don't want them to wind up in a ditch. You don't want to wind up with a bullet in the back of your head. So, I understand, but just be honest with us and stop pretending like you're America first, and stop using your PR team to tell us, oh no, we're really fighting back against them. No, you are part of them because you don't want to wind up like JFK. It's pretty simple.
Well said. Thanks for your time today, Lily. That's all we have for the McIntyre Report today. We'll look forward to having you back on the next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jamie.
There you have our US correspondent, Lilly Gaddis, political commentator. Well, lots happening. As so true, Trump could end this. He says he's a peacetime president. But where's the peace, Mr. Trump? And the war in Gaza simply cut off Israel's weapons, do the world a favor, and we'd be much happier with that. Now let's go to an ad break, and we'll be back next week with some more on the McIntyre Report.